Imagine walking into a restaurant, humiliating a nervous new waiter for an entire hour, treating him like he's worthless, mocking him in front of everyone, and then demanding a birthday celebration. Well, that night she got one, but not the kind she expected. By the time it was over, she was crying, holding a phone, begging her boss not to fire her, and the entire restaurant was watching. If you've ever worked in customer service, you know exactly how cruel some people can be. But every once in a while, karma shows up right on time. So if you enjoy stories where bullies finally get what they deserve, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and settle in, because this one is deeply satisfying. Back in 2015, I was grinding my way through nursing school, which meant two things: no sleep and a waitress job. The restaurant I worked at wasn't some big chain with billboards and commercials everywhere. Actually, they didn't advertise at all. Their entire business model relied on word of mouth. If people had a good experience, they told their friends. If they had a bad one, well, that mattered even more, because reputation was everything. Now, I had been working there long enough that management trusted me. I wasn't officially a trainer, but whenever new waiters were learning the ropes, I was usually nearby helping them survive their first chaotic shifts. One night, we had a new guy starting his first shift with his own section. He was older than most new hires, probably late 40s or early 50s, a little awkward, a little shy, and clearly terrified of messing something up. Honestly, he reminded me of someone who had just gotten a second chance at life and didn't want to lose it, which made what happened next even harder to watch. His section was right next to mine, so I kept an eye on him, helping when things got busy, checking his tables if he fell behind, normal teamwork. Everything was going okay until they walked in. 6 people, all mid-20s, loud, confident, and led by one woman who walked in like the restaurant existed purely for her entertainment. You know the type. The moment they sat down, I saw the new guy walk up to greet them, and within 2 minutes, he was already panicking. He rushed over to me, whispering nervously, "Hey, they're asking for something called XYZ, but I don't think that's on our menu." I shook my head. "Nope, it's not." He swallowed. "They're saying the other location makes it all the time." Now, technically, this was the moment I could have taught him the classic waiter skill, standing your ground. But this was his first solo shift. The last thing he needed was a confrontation. So I told him, ask the kitchen if they're willing to make it. If not, I'll talk to the table. He ran back to check. The cooks shrugged. Sure, why not? It was basically just a wrap with different ingredients. No big deal. Or at least, that shouldn't have been. But that one small concession was apparently all the encouragement that table needed. Because from that moment on, every time the poor guy walked to the table, they demanded something new. Extra sauce, more napkins, another drink, different dressing, a replacement fork, another replacement fork. Actually, can we get extra lemons? Oh, and another water. Oh, and can we split this? Oh, wait, we changed our minds. It was relentless, and every single time he delivered what they asked for, the leader of the group had another request waiting, like she was playing some twisted game. I watched him slowly unravel, his face turning red, his hands shaking, his movements getting faster and more frantic. He looked like someone trying to keep 10 spinning plates from crashing to the floor. Meanwhile, his other tables were being ignored, so I stepped in, quietly checking on them, refilling drinks, running their food, basically juggling 2 sections at once, because if I didn't, this guy might actually walk out. At one point, he came back to the kitchen looking like he'd just survived a tornado. I pulled him aside. "Listen," I told him calmly, "that table probably isn't tipping you." His shoulders slumped. "But don't worry about it. Your other tables are taken care of. I'm not touching those tips." He nodded, still looking overwhelmed. And that's when he told me something that made my blood boil. Apparently, that woman leading the table had spent the entire meal mocking him, calling him the worst waiter she had ever seen, laughing at him, talking about him like he wasn't even there. And then she dropped the real bomb. She claimed she was a trainer at another location of our restaurant, which explained why she was demanding weird menu items. But it also meant she knew exactly how stressful the job could be, and she was deliberately making it worse. But she wasn't done. Oh no. Because right before they finished eating, she announced that there were multiple birthdays at the table, which meant free cakes and a birthday song immediately. I could feel heat rising into my face, not just anger, pure molten rage. But instead of exploding, I smiled and said to the new waiter, "Don't bring the cakes yet." He blinked. Why? Because we're going to do this right. I went straight to the front manager and gave him the fastest summary imaginable. Rude table, bullying a new server, employee from another location, demanding free cakes. His expression slowly changed from confusion to anger. Remember what I said earlier? This restaurant survived on reputation. If employees from another location were coming in and treating staff like garbage, that was a huge problem. I asked him quietly, "Can I do something?" He smiled. "Oh, absolutely." Then he picked up the phone. "Also, I'm calling her manager." Perfect. Meanwhile, I ran around the restaurant gathering every employee I could find. Servers, hosts, kitchen staff, even a dishwasher. I explained the situation in about 10 seconds, and then I told them the plan. The grins spreading across their faces were immediate. We were ready. When the cakes were prepared, the new waiter carried them toward the table, and right behind him came the largest birthday singing group that restaurant had ever seen. Seriously, there were probably a dozen of us. We placed a cake at every seat. The leader of the table leaned back in her chair with the most smug smile imaginable, like she had just won some kind of power move. Then we started singing, but not normal singing. No, we screamed at the top of our lungs, the loudest, most aggressive birthday song performance that restaurant had ever witnessed. And because their table was in the corner of the room, the sound echoed. The second the song started, their smiles vanished. Hands flew up to cover ears. People physically jumped in their chairs. It was a full-volume sonic assault. And we didn't stop. We dragged that song out. Every verse, every note, louder, the sound bouncing off the walls like an explosion. By the end, their entire table looked like they had just survived a jet engine. Meanwhile, the rest of us were smiling like angels. But the real revenge was still coming, because while we were destroying their eardrums, our manager had been making phone calls. And when that woman tried to pay, she asked for employee discounts, plural, stacked together, which, if she really was a trainer, she would know was impossible. Instead, our manager handed her the phone. Her boss was on the line, and apparently he had already spoken to our manager. I watched from the host stand as her confident attitude evaporated. Her voice went quiet, then shaky, then desperate. At one point, she actually started crying, trying to explain herself, trying to justify her behavior, trying to avoid getting fired. But it was already too late. Her employee number had been confirmed, the story had been told, and her manager wasn't happy. She left that restaurant with no discount, a ringing headache, and possibly no job. Meanwhile, the new waiter? He stood there watching everything unfolding, completely stunned, like he couldn't believe an entire restaurant had just rallied behind him. For the first time that night, he smiled. And honestly, that made the whole thing worth it. I never found out exactly what happened to that woman afterwards. Maybe she convinced someone to rehire her. Maybe she didn't. But what I do know is this. For one night, a bully got a taste of her own medicine, and a nervous new waiter learned that sometimes your coworkers have your back. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more unbelievable revenge tales just like this one, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and settle in, because this one is deeply satisfying. And tell me in the comments what's the most satisfying karma moment you've ever witnessed. And remember, sometimes the loudest birthday song is the sweetest revenge.